Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on tonight's state-of-the-art radio program. As always, I'm joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, because there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, after witnessing what we did last night, it became apparent to us here at the Wright Flyer that there is a split that is growing within the rank and file of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. Of course, we've seen this split growing over the last several election cycles. Remember, in 2008, they thrust the undesirable moderate candidate, John McCain, who liked to paint himself off as some sort of maverick, down our throats. Then again, in 2012, they gave us the feckless and spineless Mitt Romney. And both of these candidates were unable to defeat the Fabian socialist Barack Hussein Obama that has brought us two of the most disastrous presidential terms in living memory. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that Barack Hussein Obama is the worst president in American history. You can look through our history and see some of the programs that we have covering that. Certainly Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and also Lincoln would fit that bill in their various respects. But going for living memory, going to the presidents that we have experienced in the past 40 or 50 years, this is among one of the worst, arguably the worst. In fact, I have a feeling that Mrs. Jimmy Carter is still furious with her husband because Barack Hussein Obama has taken away the one accolade that he did manage to achieve during his time as office, that being worst president of living memory. Nevertheless, the division has been brewing for a long time, as I've said. We have suffered under the yoke of the so-called establishment for several decades now. And here's the deal, folks. They believe that they are kingmakers. Of course, that's not true. The only so-called kingmakers in this country is none other than we the people. We have to remember that we are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great republic. That is the way that our founding fathers designed the country. That is how they intended for it to work. And that has been its structure from the start. But we've forgotten that. At least to a certain point, we have forgotten that. And, you know, what's important to recall about it is, as popular sovereigns, only we can save the country. We cannot turn to a singular candidate or a populist candidate or a wonderfully egotistical candidate who claims that he will do everything under the sun to save this country, because that is not the way this country was designed to be.
Well, it's like you said, we've said before, Randy. The first words of the Constitution is our supreme law of the land, we the people. Now, you know, it's, if we the people do not understand that concept, that we are the true ultimate wielders of power and sovereignty, it's partly because we've forgotten that, but more so because it's been washed away from our education, washed away from our grasp. It was like within our reach, and it's just been getting further and further away from our reach because of indoctrination, political correctness, revisionist history. And then when you have a candidate like, you know, Donald Trumpolini come in and create this divisiveness that you're talking about, this balkanization. I mean, he's taking a play right from Cass Sunstein. He's created a problem, a crisis, and he's not letting it go to waste because he's using it to fuel it. It's like a Leviathan that is consuming itself. It's time to kill the Leviathan.
Yeah.
It's time to kill the Leviathan. And until we, the people, stand up, take charge, and say, look, you're not going to rule this country. You're not going to turn this into a dictatorship or totalitarian regime like Hitler did with Germany, or Lenin and Stalin with Russia, Mao, so on and so Mussolini with Italy. It's just not going to happen. We will not allow that to happen. We prevented it from happening before, and we will prevent it from happening again. We must, because it is our principles and our nature to do so.
Right, right. And it's interesting that you mention the rise of all of those dictators. During the rise of the strongmen in Europe throughout the opening decades of the 20th century, there was also a rise of a voice of freedom. Mm-hmm. This voice of freedom was known as the resistance movement. They were shocked to see so many of their compatriots and fellow countrymen throw in their lot behind the likes of dictators such as Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, as you had just mentioned, Jeremy. Some banded together, risking their lives to broadcast against their new leaders. This was particularly true when the flames of the Second World War erupted. The British Broadcasting Company, or BBC, purposefully broadcast into what they called Fortress Europe, or occupied Europe, in order to encourage the patriotic people to rise up against those who forcibly took over their government and occupied their homeland. Folks, make no mistake about it, that is something akin to what we are facing right now. We feel that an outside force has come into the Republican Party, is attempting a hostile takeover, and they are trying to forcibly make us swallow the poison pill of their populist agenda. And as Jeremy and I have said on previous episodes of the Wright Flyer, populism has never worked since it's been attempted in the 19th century and the first decade of the 20th century, and it led to the progressive movement, which is tearing this country apart. And that is where we find ourselves now. This should be an easy election for we, the people, those of us who are consciously concerned for the well-being of our sacred Constitution to win. However, because of this infectious, divisive Donaldov Trumpellini, we are facing the brink of losing our party, losing our country, losing our heritage, and losing our national identity.
And above that, potentially losing our rights.
Well,
and
yeah.
Without our rights,
we have nothing.
We have nothing. I'm a big proponent, as you are, Randy, of preservation of rights. I don't care who anybody votes for. It's their right to vote. And if we told people, well, you must not vote for Trump, you must not vote for Hillary, you must not vote for Bernie, or you shouldn't vote for Cruz or Kasich, it's not our place to tell people how to exercise their rights. However, it is our obligation and duty as American citizens to enlighten individuals about the way they exercise their rights. And to do that, we have to give them the opportunity to accept the responsibility of having a fluent working understanding of the Constitution. That's what our whole premise with this is. This is, Randy, I'm starting to think of ourselves as the BBC of America.
Well, and that's the point of this entire episode.
And for too long, I've sat back and I've told people, look at your rights, vet everybody, look at what they do. Your rights are supreme to everything else. If individuals want to say they're going to do this, this, and this, again, I bring up the question with Trump. What promise has he made that he says he's going to do that does not violate the Constitution? Part two of that question is, name one thing that Ted Cruz has done that has violated the Constitution.
Again, not a thing.
Right. So people need to see that parallel. They need to be able to separate those two things and stop being led by your emotions and your blind fury. Emotions are a good thing to have so long as they are perceived by other individuals as righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Are we angry? Hell yes, we're angry. Everybody in this country is angry because we've been lied to, we've been duped, we've been used, we've been
Betrayed.
we've been betrayed, neglected. What has happened to we the people here in this country is no different than what happened to the colonials by the British.
Right.
It is no different. And
Except the difference. Well, no, there is one difference. It's worse because it's our fellow countrymen that are doing it, not a mother country. We're not a colony. We're a sovereign nation with popular sovereigns.
Yes, and with people losing sight of that, again, they've lost sight of it, or they never had sight of it at all because of political correctness, revisionist history, indoctrination, all of these things. And it's all a grand design by the Fabians and progressives. That's what it is. So we have to band together. People, Trump wants to talk about, I've united the party. No, you haven't. You haven't united anything.
If anything, you've divided us.
You've divided us even worse. It's kind of, drawing a circle, and there's a starting point of the circle where everybody's unified, and then it comes back around full circle to where there's complete and total division. There's no separation between the two in the perception of reality for individuals. They're looking behind them instead of looking ahead, being united. They're backwards. Mm-hmm. It's like living in bizarro world. It's frustrating. It's mortifying. It's embarrassing. Because
it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
And it needs to stop. You want unity in this country, true unity, true, equal, not complacency, but
respect.
You need to understand how your rights work and what is at stake with throwing your blind fury out there and allowing your emotions to dictate your actions.
Mm-hmm. And Jeremy, when all of the sources of news and information during World War II in the home countries of the resistance were under the control of the propaganda ministry led by Joseph Goebbels, the voice of resistance gave the people an alternative voice. That is what we are here at the Wright Flyer. And it goes to a concern that Anne-Marie Morel of the Politichicks brought up, and I thought it was a very poignant concern, and it's something that I want to voice my unity with her and the Politichicks with respect to this episode and on this episode right now. Anne-Marie, yes, you are right to be frightened and worried that if you go after Donald Trump, who's already come out on numerous occasions and said that he wants to roll back the public figure exception in our libel and defamation laws, which is to say that anyone who purposefully puts themselves out into the public eye and puts themselves up for public ridicule cannot easily make a libel claim against someone unless they can show absolute malice. Now, what that means is that we intentionally put forward a fraudulent piece that we knew was false in order to defame. That is actual malice, and it's a very difficult threshold to pass in court. Well, Trump wants to get rid of that. Trump wants to get rid of that in order to attack those who would speak out against him. And Anne-Marie is right to bring up that concern. We, too, have become a part of the press by delivering this program. And yes, she is concerned, and we are concerned. But we will stand shoulder to shoulder with any like-minded individuals who want to speak out against governments or individuals, irrespective of their political views, because that is what our founding fathers would have done. That is the quintessential nature of the American people, and it's why we have a free press, as it is guaranteed within the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. That is the most sacred of the rights, and that's why it's number one. And to look to history again, because it is such a great teacher. The occupiers, meaning the Nazis and other fascist forces that had taken over Europe, threatened anyone who would listen to the alternative voice with death. With death.
Yeah.
But here's the amazing thing. Despite the risks, the people tuned into it. They yearned and hungered for the truth, and the Allies were prepared to provide it. Jeremy and I were discussing this last evening when we were going through the various primaries that were carried out during Mega Tuesday. We read an article on the Blaze that was, for lack of a better term, a wall of shame for those pundits and so-called conservatives and commensurate that have bailed from their conservative roots and principles. Jeremy, I don't remember who the author was. It just skips my mind at the moment.
I can't remember, but I will get it. Scott Maxwell. Scott Maxwell?
It was somebody with the Blaze.
Matt
Walsh, I believe.
Yes, Matt Walsh.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Matt Walsh. I couldn't remember your name off the top of my head. It has been a long week.
Well, it speaks to the point, Randy, that, again, with the First Amendment, our country could not exist if it was not for the people speaking their voice. Right. Again, it goes right to the core concepts, the first three words of our preamble to the Constitution, which was the precursor to the Constitution itself. We, the people, do ordain, meaning we, the people, raised up our voices. We put people in place to negotiate and handle things for us on our behalf. We dictated to them what we wanted.
And we also proclaim that these rights that we have are non-negotiable.
Well, there goes that theory of Trump saying, everything's negotiable.
Right.
It's just, and again, only a walking oversized dandruff flake would think that something like the Constitution and people's rights are negotiable. When you say everything's negotiable, let's put it in the context in which you truly mean it. Everything, which means if you're willing to negotiate my rights, first of all, you don't have the authority to do that. Number two, you're not big enough to do that. In fact, nobody walking this earth is big enough to negotiate my rights for me.
Nor does anyone have the right to do so.
I will not allow it to happen. I will not allow people to negotiate other individuals' rights, because that is my sovereign duty and obligation as a citizen to make it such, as it is all of yours.
Right. And, as we read through the list mentioned in Mr. Walsh's piece, we felt like how those who were occupied during the Second World War must have felt. Trusted voices have been corrupted by the wave of blind rage that has swept through our party and our land. That's when it hit us. We have an opportunity to serve you, as those radio broadcasters of the BBC served the Allies during the entirety of the conflict. We will pierce the propaganda for you. We will shine the light of truth for you and continue to provide you with a voice of courageous conservatism. We are duty-bound and obliged to do so, because everywhere we turn, we see that the trusted pillars of so-called conservative media have betrayed us. They have stabbed us in the back, and they have sold out for someone who has espoused very progressive Fabian socialist views for the vast majority of his adult life, and that is not who we are. It does not represent us, and it presents a danger for our freedom and for our representative Republican form of government. Folks, our founding fathers expected us to be proactive and vigilant when it came to our fundamental and unalienable rights. That is something we have become complacent on. We're all guilty of this, but we can stem the tide if we wake up to the realities of the dangers that are facing us, and if we unite and stand shoulder to shoulder and never surrender.
Randy, we came up with a pledge last night that we here at the Wright Flyer, I, Jeremy Grapington, do pledge, solemnly swear, that I will never give up. I will not give up. I will continue in my full capacity to be that beacon of light shining for the truth for you all. I pledge that I will never turn my back on your rights. I will never forsake our shared Constitution. I will never give up. I will never surrender. I will never say die. That is my pledge to all of you, and I'm confident in saying that that is also Randy's pledge to all of you. And that pledge should be a pledge from all of us to each other.
And that pledge is embodied by our shared Constitution. That is what we must stand up for. And there was a close friend, mutual friend and acquaintance of Jeremy and mine, who asked a question. And to go out on a limb here, yes, this friend is a excuse me, folks, is a Trump supporter. And he said, well, when has the Constitution not been violated? He pointed to the Alien Sedition Act. He pointed to the Civil War. He pointed to various historical things. And I responded that, yes, the Alien Sedition Act was held unconstitutional. The Civil War was addressed with the 13th, 14th, 15th, and so on amendments, not just for slavery, but for everyone. And that, yes, there are abuses, but no system ever devised by the hands of man has ever been perfect. But we're the closest to come to it. And should we just throw it away because it has been difficult? Or do we do what Americans always do and prove that our inconquerable spirit is still that no foe can tear us down, that the only ones that can tear us down are we ourselves by refusing to stand up for, to carry out, and fulfill our duties and obligations as popular sovereigns? I think the answer, folks, is open and obvious.
You know, like you mentioned, Randy, it's not a perfect system. Mm-hmm. It is probably the closest system that we have to perfection of a government. But that is why our shared Constitution says, in order to form a more perfect union. It wasn't implying that our union was perfect. It was implying that in order to reach or strive to achieve that level of perfection, which can never happen, but we can never stop trying. This is the point of never give up. We have to keep pressing forward and onward with trying to maintain and preserve our shared Constitution, our core principles and values, the fundamental tenets of natural law. We have to do that. It is required of us. If we stop doing that, then we see things happen like a Nazi Germany take place, or Stalin or Lenin Russia, Pol Pot. Those things come to fruition because the people have stopped and they became complacent. They did not stand up for their rights. They didn't voice their rights, their concerns. They didn't petition their government for redress of grievances. And it goes back to what Thomas Jefferson said. And it ties right in with this. When that happens, it comes a point to where the roots of the tree of liberty must be replenished and watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants alike. Well, folks, guess what? I have my watering can in hand. Now, I don't want to spill a drop out of that unless I absolutely have to. I don't want to see it come to that. Nobody wants to see it come to that. We shouldn't have to come to that. We should be of the mindset that it never should have to come to that, because we are willing to hold people accountable and are willing to hold ourselves accountable. That is what Thomas Jefferson was speaking about.
And you know what's so fascinating about it all, Jeremy, and not even just fascinating, what's kind of frightening about it as well, is we're already seeing that they're attempting to browbeat us with this idea of if you don't support Donald Trump, should he secure the nomination, then you're voting for Hillary Clinton, or you're voting for Bernie Sanders, and you're throwing your vote away if you vote a third party or write Ted Cruz in. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it because I am not proactively going out and voting for Hillary, and I'm not proactively going out and voting for Bernie Sanders. And I did not create this situation that we are currently facing. Those who promoted a candidate who is unacceptable from a constitutional standpoint are the ones who are squarely to blame for this. Now, they're free to vote that way, but they, as we've said from our pilot episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015, that you have to accept the consequences for your actions. You must be responsible for the decisions you make. That is part of the duty and obligation and responsibility of being a popular sovereign. And therefore, you can vote for Donald Trump, but the consequence that you have to pay, the price that you have to pay the toll keeper, is that we, constitutional conservatives, true, staunch, pure constitutionalists, will not throw our lot behind a man that we deem to be a direct threat to our shared constitution. And that is the price.
Now, I'd like to make it a little bit of an analogy here. When somebody says, if you vote third party, you're throwing your vote away. In other words, you're wasting the exercising of your right. That would be like somebody telling me or anybody else, well, if you're going to exercise your Second Amendment to keep and bear arms, if you don't purchase certain types of firearms, then you're just wasting your exercising of your right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have the right, the freedom of choice. It is our right. It is our vote. It is ours to do what we please with.
Mm-hmm.
Just like everybody else's vote is theirs to do what they please with. Again, I support anybody who exercises their rights to vote, regardless of who they vote for, only based on the principle that they are exercising their right. But when you want to tell other people how to exercise their rights, you are infringing upon their rights. You are taking control of their rights. You do not have the authority to do that. And if that offends you, you don't have the right to not be offended.
Yeah, that's found in Article Non-Section Existent, Clause 0. Yeah. And you see, folks, there is no way that we will divorce ourselves from our principles. Like our founding fathers, we value our sacred honor above all else. That's what gave us our nation, and that's the only way we can save it. When you look at Donald Trump, do you see anything about sacred honor? Do you see anything about a commitment to what this nation stands for and represents? Or do you see a man who has just said, I, me? And the same goes for Ohio Governor John Kasich. I have seen him stand up in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and repeat in his statement, his victory speech at the end of the Ohio run, I, me. All about I, me. When I listened to the speech that Cruz gave, it was we the people. We the people. And this is a point that Glenn Beck made on his show today. And irrespective of what you may think of Beck, he was right to point this out. Cruz is the only candidate currently vying for the Republican nomination who understands that it is we the people that are in control of this country. Going back to that first line of the preamble to the Constitution, we the people. And we the people must realize that we are endowed with the type of power that we have right now. And that is something that no earthly, rightful, legitimate authority can take away from us. But to preserve that, we must stand up for our rights. And that means refusing to give up. Now, yes, they're already saying that right now there is no way for Cruz to get the prerequisite 1,234, isn't it? I
I
believe.
1,237.
Well, all right, 1,237 prerequisite delegates to secure the nomination. He can get to about 100 of that. But you know what that also means, folks? There's no way that Donald Trump can get that prerequisite number. So either way, it looks like we're going to the full convention.
Sure. And just real quick on a side note,
Mm.
Randy, you know, I posted the link to this live broadcast that we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually made a mistake with it. It was just brought to my attention by one of our followers on the show. I typed, "We are live now. Listen in and be part of hashtag Making America Great Again with us." Folks, it's not supposed to read Making America Great Again. America is already great. It has always been great. That was a mistake on my part. It is supposed to read the hashtag Making America Smart Again. So I apologize for that. I'm sorry if that sent the wrong message to folks. That's on me. I take full responsibility for it, but I just had to clear the air on that.
Look, we're all human. We all make mistakes.
I've had a long day.
Isn't it a breath of fresh air that we admit it, unlike certain candidates vying for the highest office right now?
No, I'm not going to have somebody go punch somebody in the face over this. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But
you could go walk into a wall on your own. But
sure,
I mean,
and I'll gladly do that. It's a small price to pay for accepting responsibility. So again, folks, I apologize for that. In no way, shape, or form do we advocate, quote, make America great again, because we understand that America has always been great. It will always be great. It will never cease in being great because we have our shared Constitution.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's important to recall that the nation's salvation rests in the hands of the people alone. That's why our founding fathers designed this country the way that they did. And that's how it must be saved. To do anything less would be to abandon that principled spirit that led us to become who we are today. The problem we face now is that too many of our supposed colleagues have abandoned the principles they once claimed to espouse. That can be discouraging, particularly when you have fundamental doctrinal disagreements with the man they are pushing as the only choice as our next president. And this is the thing that I don't understand with respect to those that are pushing the so-called Trump train. Why is it just black and white with them? Why is it that everything has to be either Trump or nothing? That everyone lies but Trump, even though we can show irrefutable evidence that time and again he has lied. Well, folks, you can check our records and our history and see that we have been among the first to criticize the Donaldas for the stances that he has taken, which we believe are completely contrary to the spirit and letter of the supreme law of the land, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, is our shared Constitution. We will remain stalwart in that. We are the new resistance. We are standing in stark opposition to any force, irrespective of which side of the political aisle they stand, to defend our sacred principles, our sacred honor, our heritage, and our traditions, as well as our institutions. Because let's face it, folks, nobody else but we, the people, is going to stand up for our rights, for our nation, for our destiny, and above all, our future. We owe it to the up-and-coming generations and to those generations that have yet to be born to take a principled stance, to stand up for what our nation is and what it has always been. But to do that, we must acknowledge that it is our role and our duty and our responsibility to do so.
You know, and again, without having that understanding, you know, the complacency is going to continue to spread. You know, the Fabians, the progressives, they're just going to be able to dig their nails in deeper and ultimately just rip everything apart. That's what they want.
Mhm.
That has been their whole agenda from day one. So, and again, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I view this as a challenge for us. And I love challenges. I don't know about anybody else, but I absolutely love challenges. I love being able to take something and it's not quite right. There's something wrong with it, but I like to fix things. It's just the way I was brought up. It's in my nature, with my mechanical inclinations that I have. I want to fix things. I'm the type of person, I will do everything and anything that I can in order to help somebody, to lift them up, to make their lives better. That's what I want to do. That's what Randy wants to do. That's what the radio aviation excellence is all about.
Mhm.
That's what we are for. We're embracing our obligation and our duty. We want to make America smart again.
It's interesting because I had this dream of the show. I conjured this up as a college student, a sophomore. This was right before the Republicans lost the Senate. And I remember saying at the time that the Republican Party is failing to reach to the young generation, to the next generation. They have entrenched themselves into these detente ideas. In fact, that's where the detente wing of the gutless opposition party has come, and they are purposefully obfuscating the truth. They're being obstructionists. They are capitulating and collaborating far too often. And my fear at the time was that some strong man who would be pretending to be a conservative would attempt to hostilely take over the conservative movement and to force a populist agenda down our throats. Because if you recall, at that time, that was when they tried another push at amnesty, and it was severely swatted down by the American people. They said no. But the detente wing of the gutless opposition party just merely doubled down on their rhetoric, doubled down on their pursuits of forcing a change in this country that the people did not desire. Folks, what we need is a voice of the people that represents the pulse of the people, what the people stand for, not just this generation or previous generations, but for the up and coming generations and the generations that surpass them. It is time that we coalesce behind one another and say enough is enough. And I don't care whether it's Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, or flying one-horned, one-eyed purple people eater. We will stand against them. Irrespective of how much adversity we face, we must stand against them because our founding fathers would stand against them. When so many have bailed and abandoned us, like Sean Hannity, do not lose faith in the cause. You are not alone in your disenfranchisement with this. Rather, we here at the Wright Flyer will stand up for you and never give up. Not only will we stand up for you, we will lend you our hand and help you to stand with us. We will stand as a wall of liberty and freedom. Trump mentions building a wall. Well, we're building a spiritual wall that will surpass any brick and mortar that he can put up.
We the people are the wall. We the people are the wall. I will not allow anybody, any sovereign citizen of the United States to fall and falter and succumb to being browbeat, to be pushed down, trampled on by their rights being violated. I don't care who you are. I don't care what political bent you have. If you exercise your rights and you fully understand them, and you are a sovereign citizen of the United States, Hell, even individuals who come here the legal way to get
Naturalized
citizenship,
citizens.
naturalized citizens. Guess what? When you become naturalized, you become a sovereign of the United States. You are included in we the people. It doesn't matter what ethnic background you're from, what culture you're from. It makes no difference because at that point in time, you are an American. You are a sovereign and one of the supreme wielders of authority in the United States. And I will stand shoulder to shoulder with you in making sure that your rights are not violated.
It is our duty to do so. That is what our founding fathers expected from us, and we cannot let them down. Because, you know, folks, it's not just the past generations, our forefathers and our ancestors, that we would be betrayed. We would be selling out the birthright, the greatest birthright of any people on the face of the planet, to the future generations. And of course, that birthright of which I speak is none other than our shared Constitution. We cannot and we will not betray that. Because if we do, then we lose our rights. And without our rights, we have absolutely nothing. And that goes against every every fiber and grain of this nation. The societal fabric of the United States of America is made up by the individual strands, which are we, the popular sovereigns. Strong we can be together and individually, but the strongest we can be is when we defend one another from any and all threats, be they foreign or be they domestic. And right now, we are facing a domestic threat. We are facing a hostile takeover of our political party, which, again, folks, it's allegiance to the Constitution, not a political party that matters. And therefore, if the political party stops being a useful tool, meaning that the political party leaves us, we don't change our positions. That's where, and though we disagreed with Reagan's second term on a fair amount, it's where his line of truth comes in when he said that, speaking of the Democrat Party, I didn't leave the party, it left me. Well, we are at that point now with the Republican Party. Actually, we've been at that point for a while now. If the Republican Party wants to lose its collective mind to drink the Trump-aid, we will not follow suit. Because our allegiance is the Constitution, and we do not see Donaldus Julius Caesar Trumpolini supporting the Constitution. When has he uttered that he would support the Constitution? When has he said that he would follow it? You see, we've seen multiple instances where it has been shown that he doesn't believe that any laws apply to him, that he's above the laws. Look at how he did things with the Polish Brigade in building Trump Tower and demolishing the old Brandau building that stood there before. He doesn't follow the law. And in fact, he's even said that at rallies, that to promote the law, we have to go past it. That's the language of tyrants and despots. And we can ill afford to allow that sort of twisted machination to befall this great republic of ours.
It's no different than what's her name, Nancy Pelosi, said about Obamacare. Well, we have to pass it before we can see what's in it. No, that's not how it works. See, your job as an elected official, an elected senator or representative, is to make law. When you make that law, it is to be made available right there for the people to see. You cannot take laws and lump everything together and then pass certain portions of it, or pass it in such a way to where only certain portions are made available. This goes to akin with Trump saying we have to get past the law in order to enforce it. No. The law is on the books. The law is there. You follow the law to the letter, period. Mm-hmm. You don't skirt it. You don't try and jump around it, because what you're doing when you try to skirt around the law, what you are doing is you are violating due process. You are violating liberty. You are violating freedom. You are violating the true essence of what the spirit of the Constitution is. You are obstructing justice for individuals that law would adversely affect them. So You're willing to violate people's rights in order to push something forward because, well, more people, come out on top than some other people. No, guess what? That's violation of the equal protection under the law.
You have to recall that with our Constitution, there is a requirement that it apply equally to all, as Jeremy was saying there. But that's the problem with the elitists. And yes, folks, Trump is an elitist. He is perhaps one of the worst offenders of it. You know how he came out and said, I love the veterans, we support the veterans, this, that, and the other. He still hasn't given the money, the vast majority of the money that he claimed to collect when he skirted that Fox News debate a while back, to the veterans. In fact, in front of Trump Tower, he erected planters so that veterans who had received peddling licenses, as it's known in New York, where you can go and sell your wares, he wanted to prevent them from being able to peddle their wares in front of Trump Tower because he said it was adversely affecting the property value of his tower. So you see, folks, once again, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. And the old adage goes that actions speak louder than words. We've seen his actions. We've heard his words. His actions are that of a progressive Fabian socialist that is diametrically opposed to all that is near and dear about this country. And he's doubling down on that while proclaiming to be something that he's not. Oh, and Jeremy, here's a great little update. The great and powerful Donaldoff is skirting another debate, and the Fox News channel canceled it.
Really? So
Really?
let's see. He skirts a debate, couple debates, events and whatnot, and now because he's not going to be there, they're canceling the debate. You know what that tells me about Fox News? That tells me this. Well, Trump is our headliner. He's the one that everybody's coming to see. So if he's not going to be there, we're not going to get any ratings from it.
Now, in fairness, John Kasich was kind of whining that if he wasn't going to be there, then he wouldn't go. And so I guess they were saying it wouldn't be a debate at all. But, here's the thing, folks. If you're going to vie for the highest office in the land, and it doesn't matter how many debate cycles have already gone or how many debates have been hosted already, we still haven't heard any substance from Trump. He still hasn't explained his policy, and we now have a narrow enough field where we could see clear policy differences, and he's afraid of it. He's a poltroon. He's cowering in fear because he knows that Texas Senator Ted Cruz would mop the floor with him. But you know what? If he thinks that Ted Cruz is somebody he's going to worry about, what in the hell is he going to do when it's against Hillary and the generals, should he, by some cruel twist of fate, secure the nomination?
This is what I like in this too. See, Ted Cruz has no problem standing on his own 2 feet. He will go toe-to-toe with anybody in a debate. In fact, he's just about done that. He's challenged illegal, unconstitutional laws in the Supreme Court and has won. Argued in front of the highest court in the land and has won. I think Trumpolini is scared of Cruz. In fact, I know he's scared of Cruz. Now, picture, if you will, you have a schoolyard bully or a person who thinks they're a schoolyard bully, but they want to put up some kind of a shield. They want to use other people. That's what bullies do. Bullies use other people as deflection or as shields to take the brunt of things. That's where John Kasich comes in. See, because Trump is he's a chauvinistic pig. His attacks on women. And see, that's one of the things that Hillary would hit Trump on. His attacks on women. She would give her credit or credibility to be able to use that phallus argument, the war on women. And here's why. Because Donald Trump is hiding behind John Kasich in order to run away from or stay away from facing Cruz face to face. He is using John Kasich, as the old adage goes, hiding behind a skirt. That's what he's doing. If Kasich was to get out of the race, Trump would have no choice but to face Cruz in a debate head on. And that scares Trump to death. You know why? Let's go back to something that Ted Cruz said. He looked right at Donald Trump and said, I would never ask you for legal advice. The reason being is because Donald Trump has no clue or understanding about the law. None. No. He has none. This is why he has paid lawyers to understand it and interpret the law for him. Well, guess what? All Cruz has to do is keep the topic on the Constitution. Trump is done. Or he can keep the topic on illegal aliens. The Trump is done. Any topic, any key issue that comes up, Trump is done. He knows this. That's why I think he's trying to keep Kasich in as long as he can. And I think this is part of the reason why Kasich may even want it to go to a brokered convention. For some reason, Kasich thinks that he could still get the nomination.
And it's a statistical impossibility for him to do so.
Absolutely. And the next statistical impossibility on the rung down from that is Trump securing the nomination. Because at this point, I believe Trump needs what, 59%?
58, I believe.
58% of every single state's delegates from here on out.
That ain't happening.
It's not going to happen. It's impossible. He won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
You know why? Because I think Wyoming is going to go strictly for Cruz.
Well, Wyoming already has 66%.
What's the
Nebraska?
Nebraska. Thank you.
Which is on May 10th, I believe.
My geography is horrible, but it's just, it's been a long day, long night, long week. But the point is, they seem to have this utopian fantasy to where some, rainbow-colored unicorn is going to swoop in and hand them the nomination. I don't get it. What the unicorn's going to do, assuming that unicorns, exist in their world, they do. But what would really happen is it's nothing more than them being on some kind of severe hallucinogenic drug to where they see in reality it's a monkey with a hand grenade, and they view it as a unicorn going to give them, lollipops and gummy bears.
Right.
It's completely, again, like living in Bizarro world.
And Jeremy, when I look at what these people are doing and what they're saying, I'm reminded of the principled stance that Winston Churchill took during the height of the war, particularly in the height of what the British called the Blitz, when the air war was ratcheting up. England had radar, and the Germans didn't understand that. And so when they were threadbare, they were standing alone. It's why Churchill said that never before has so much by so few been owed to so many. It was because they stood alone. They stood for their principles. They ensured that the liberty and sovereignty of the British nation and people would not be wiped out from the face of this earth. Remember, France had been utterly defeated by the seemingly unstoppable train of the Nazi war machine. They fell in 2 weeks. Hitler's blitzkrieg strategy befuddled his enemies and even surprised his own people. Nonetheless, Churchill refused to surrender. He proved that the British nation and people were not prepared to sacrifice everything they were on the altar of tyranny, despotism, and oppression. That is the same vow we make to you. The Fabian socialists will not control us. They will not define us. The chaos we have seen is the result of overt meddling by the so-called establishment. They are the ones that have ignored the will of the American people time and memorial. Just recall the midterm elections of November of 2014 when they made all these grandiose promises. Oh, and now Ohio Governor John, or no, not governor. He and Kasich, the two Johns, look very similar, but former Speaker of the House John Boehner has come out and said that he would support a Paul Ryan presidency if it went to a brokered convention. No. We will not tolerate that. We will not accept that. We will not accept you pulling a rabbit out of your posterior, because it needs to go to the one that the people have supported. Now, that's not saying that the people supported Donald Trump. It needs to go to those who in the closed primaries supported him. When you cross over from another political party, I think that brings into question the validity of the votes.
Well, and again, this speaks to the point that Trump says, with his so-called unification, look at how many people I've brought into the Republican Party. That may possibly be a valid statement if it was the general election. If you had Democrats crossing over in the general election to vote for you, then it could be plausible. This is the primary season. People, there are states to where open primaries. Some states you don't have to be registered to vote. You can vote for whatever candidate you want. So we see Democrats, socialists jumping over to vote for Trump. Why? Because they know that Trump cannot defeat Hillary. So they want to flood him with a bunch of delegates in hopes that he becomes the nominee so that they have their whipping post for their, harlot to ride in on her beast and devour him.
Mm-hmm. It goes to something that Rush Limbaugh had done. Remember Operation Chaos back in the 2008 election, folks, when Rush encouraged conservatives to cross over in open primary states to vote for Barack Hussein Obama because he thought that he would be the most easily defeated? Here's the deal. That didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because the Fabian socialists were in the midst of an all-out coup of the Democrat Party. And so the party coalesced around this man. It gave them the choice they wanted. But where it is now, and where we stand now, is we do not support Trump. Trump does not represent the face of the party. He does not represent our beliefs. And therefore, it is working to their favor. So they have turned Operation Chaos against us. Thank you very much, Rush. And then I hear you still spewing a lot of support for Trump, even though you haven't come out and officially endorsed him. You've been talking out of both sides of your mouth. And I think that has been a great detriment to us all.
Yeah. And, that kind of plays into the propaganda as well. It's, it goes to the point to where, when Goebbels spoke about black propaganda versus white propaganda, black propaganda being that propaganda that's hidden from the public to a certain degree. It's shrouded in mysticism, so on and so forth. And the white propaganda is, just the facts that are put out there. Goebbels says that, black propaganda can be utilized when white propaganda will not work. That's what Operation Chaos was. It was black propaganda. It was shrouded to a certain degree. It was made public because in order for propaganda to work, it has to be obtained through an attention-getting medium, i.e. Rush Limbaugh, his show. He garners the attention. He is a attention-getting medium, just like we are. But the fact, it goes to the point to where if that propaganda is perceived in such a way, then it becomes boomerang proof. Well, it did become boomerang proof in 2008, and now it's seemingly becoming boomerang proof at this point in time, except for the fact that we are here to catch that boomerang and throw it back.
And that's why we have made the vow that we have to stand with you shoulder to shoulder, vowing never to surrender, never to give up, never to give our party to these charlatans that would destroy us. And make no mistake about it, folks, I think this was all by design. And I'm not a conspiracist. I'm not like Alex Jones. If you want a conspiracist, go over to Trump. They're all there. The Matt Drudges and the Alex Jones, who is a fraud. You know, he is a charlatan. They are the ones that are supporting Trump. They are the ones that are peddling the nonsense of things like, well, Cruz is not eligible to run because he's not an American citizen or a natural-born American citizen. And then they'll even cite the law, but they will incorrectly interpret it. Folks, we have interpreted that statute time and again on past episodes of the Wright Flyer. It is beyond refute and beyond dispute. This is why the various cases like that one that was brought up in New York have been thrown out on justiciability grounds. It's because there is no case. Sure. It is settled law. And these people, it doesn't matter how many times you explain it to them, they do not care. They are just out for blind retribution and vengeance. They are out to burn the whole system down. But let me ask you a question. Would you hire the arsonist to put out the fires that he has started?
That's a good question. Or we could take it a step further. Would you hire the rapist to prosecute himself in a court of law?
Yeah, no.
That's just, that's the lunacy behind this. It's absolute blind fury lunacy.
And then when these people say that we have to coalesce behind Trump, that we have to vote for him because anything against him is a vote for Hillary, that's the same thing that the party hardliners said in 2008. It's the same thing that they said in 2012. How is Trump pushing a message of anti-establishmentarianism when he is pulling this line for the establishment? When he has gone in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and said that he can be a chameleon and that to get anything done, you have to be an establishment type. And believe it or not, that was a swipe at Cruz. Folks, are we not irritated and tired and fed up with the wheeling and dealing that has been happening with the Democrats? And then to say that we have to coalesce behind them because, this election's Hillary's the worst, but they said Obama was the worst before that. And before that, it was John Kerry was the worst. And before that, it was Al Gore was the worst. And you just have to vote the party line. Folks, that is repeating the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. That is insanity.
Here's the point I want to make. All of these individuals that say, well, if you don't vote for Trump or a vote for somebody other than Trump is a vote for Hillary. What they're doing with that is they are creating the very thing that they're claiming that they're railing against.
Mm-hmm.
They are creating an establishment. They've
even come out and said that they're creating a new Republican Party.
Yeah, it's creating an establishment because they're telling people you have to toe the line. That's what the establishment does. If you buck the line or don't toe the line, like Ted Cruz has fought against the establishment. That's why they hate him so much. But I think they hate Trump more because Trump has basically slapped them in the face. And they're going to do everything they can to tear him down, including, but not limited to, possibly backing Ted Cruz. Now, people would say, well, that automatically makes Cruz an establishment if he accepts the backing of the establishment. Wrong.
Well, it's interesting. The establishment has already come out and said that Cruz needs to apologize for saying that Mitch McConnell was a liar. Well, I think that yes, in a way, they're right. Cruz should apologize. He should apologize in the same manner in which he apologized for his New York values statements. And here's the apology. Here's what it should be, almost verbatim. You're right, folks. I'm sorry that Mitch McConnell chose to lie. I'm sorry that he chose to ignore the will of the people. I'm sorry that he makes poor choices. And I'm sorry that he made me have to go out and point the truth. But I am not going to abandon showing the truth, standing up for the truth, standing up for principles. I'm sorry that he is a liar.
But Randy, that's just him being able to utilize his legal education to twist and manipulate words. He doesn't
So what?
mean that. That's no different than the education that some of these individuals have gotten from Trump University, and creating their own blind fury and allowing themselves to be sucked in to the emotional leviathan that is consuming them.
Yeah.
You want to split hairs, you want to talk semantics about this. You know what? Here's the way I would have phrased it if I was Ted Cruz. You're right. I'm sorry I didn't call him a liar earlier or more often than this.
Yeah.
Because that would be a sincere apology. Not that the one he gave was not a sincere apology. It was absolutely a sincere apology, so to speak.
But he shouldn't be sorry for saying it. He should be sorry
absolutely not.
that. And yeah, I'm sorry that Mitch McConnell's a liar.
You never apologize for your principles ever,
right?
Because if you apologize for your principles, that is admitting that, well, maybe I was wrong for standing on my principles. Then you abandon your principles, folks. Trump, time and time again, has brought up this term abandonment. These candidates have abandoned you. Vote for me. Time and time again. What Trump is doing is he is duping people into abandoning their principles, their working and fluent understanding of the Constitution. That is what's happening. Again, this is pure Trumpaganda, point blank. That's exactly what it is. He is taking an issue, twisting it around and making it appealing to people, and then using it to tear those people down. He is forcing people to abandon their own principles.
And, one of my friends came out and said, look, it's now time to start attacking Hillary. No, it's not. The reason it's not is because this is not settled. And Trump is the one that refused to attack Hillary. Trump is the one that came out like a bull in a china store attempting to destroy all of his rivals. But you know what? This isn't a bull in a china store anymore. This is a classical Spanish bullfight. And Cruz is the troubadour. It is time to slaughter the bull, and then we can move on to Hillary. Because the problem is we're facing the male clone of Hillary, who is attempting to take over the gutless opposition party, or GOP. He's attempting to devalue our vote, to strip us of our voice, and to divide and conquer. Now, why people can't see that is once again rooted in the blind rage. They are erroneously thinking that anyone who has any connection with Washington, D.C. should be punished, irrespective of whether that person is the only one that stood up to defend them against the very thing that they claim to be railing against. It is sheer madness. And I cannot and will not throw my vote behind someone who is intentionally attempting to burn down our republic. I want to restore the republic. I don't want a wrecking ball. A wrecking ball lacks the finesse that is necessary to bring this country back to the right path. And the problem is Trump hasn't ever once said that he's going to remove the chains and shackles that hold back the people. He's always turned and said government, government, government.
Well, and that's true with the point that he was asked in an interview. He says, regarding healthcare, well, he says, I believe, people should have healthcare, this and that. Well, who's going to pay for it? Well, the government. Really? That's unconstitutional. Sorry, the government has no legal constitutional authority to enact healthcare legislation. They don't. It's not in their enumerated powers. Mm-hmm. They have no authority to do it. But Trump seems to think that they do. And he wants everybody to have healthcare, and the government's going to pay for it. Sorry, doesn't work. It won't work. Now, you talked about, attacking Hillary. And you're right. Now's not the time to attack Hillary because we don't need to attack Hillary. Everything that she's done is already there. It's not going anywhere. Okay? We have a problem before we can face a problem like Hillary Clinton and all the atrocities that she's done. We have to put our own fires out first, because if we ignore our own fires, the fires that she's setting around our house are going to consume the house and everybody inside. If we try to keep her from lighting fires to burn our house down, the fires inside the house that are raging now will burn us out. We have to put that fire out first and then attack her. Go after her. She's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's something my dad tells me time and time again. You have to pick which hill you want to die on. Well, guess what? I don't want to die on the hill to where I'm consumed by fire because of blind fury and ignorance that's brought on by despotism and narcissism. I want to extinguish that fire. That is a hill that I'm going to conquer and do away with. I don't care what it takes. If it takes my final breath, I'm going to eliminate that problem and then take care of the other problems.
Yeah. We are to a point now where we have to resolve these problems. Donald Trump has made it clear that what we are in the midst of right now is a battle for the soul of the country. And I'm sorry, but I do not believe that he coalesces with my point of view, that he coalesces with the point of view of Jeremy or of our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward. He does not represent us. He despises us. And he despises his own followers. When he said that I love the uneducated, that was not meant as a polite statement. That was meant as, I love the uneducated. They're so easy to dupe. And I know it makes them mad when we say and point out the fact that they have been duped. But they have been duped. Look at the man's records. Look at his past.
Which dictator was it that was it Stalin that coined the term useful idiots? Because that's exactly so. That Lenin or Stalin, either I can't remember.
Lenin, actually.
Lenin. Okay. Lenin coined the term useful idiots. That's what Trump meant by the poorly educated. People, again, let's put this into context. Somebody who is poorly educated, let's say somebody's, reaches the age of, let's say 50 years old, has an 8th grade education, has never finished high school, has never gone to college. Society as a whole will perceive that individual as being an idiot, but they are useful to society because as being an idiot, they can actually do menial tasks and labor. That is what Trump is referring to people with the poorly educated. That he has insulted them. He has defamed them. He has violated their intelligence by saying, I love the poorly educated. He's calling them useful idiots. Again, another narcissistic trait and dictatorial trait of a potentate and a fascist.
And it's not just the establishment or so-called establishment that is viewing us as pawns on the proverbial chessboard. It is also Donald Trump that is looking at us in that light and in that fashion. Like you said, he sees us as a way to secure power for himself. And all you have to do is watch his demeanor and his persona to see how he positions himself, what he says, and if he mentions we, the people. And as we've said, on this episode and on past episodes, it's always I, me, me, me. But it can't be I, or me, me, me. When you look at the foundation of this country, when you look at the societal fabric of the United States and the great social contract that exists, being the Constitution, it is designed that we, the people, are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. That is the quintessential part of the American character, heritage, spirit, and national identity. but that has been under a deliberate and incessant attack for generations. And if we don't act now, then we risk losing everything.
Now, Randy, people are going to say, well, he's made the statements that we're going to win again. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Yes, he has. But
what are we going to win?
But here's the thing. He always prefaces those statements with, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. I'm a winner, I don't lose, blah, blah, blah. So what he's doing, again, is more Trumpaganda, where he is laying the field out. I'm a winner, I'm successful, I'm rich, I'm powerful, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to do this. He's placing a false sense of delegated authority on his followers. Hitler did the same thing. That is how Hitler got the people of Germany to coalesce behind him, because he gave them this false sense of security, this false sense of authority. And then what did he do once he rose to power? He took it all away.
Yeah. Through the enabling acts. And, you know, we keep using this mention of a fire. Who else actually used a physical fire to establish his dictatorship?
No, that was Adolf Hitler with the burning of the Reichstag.
Isn't it funny that even though the difference here is that the burning of the Reichstag was a physical, actual fire, it's the same type of thing. It was to stir up and stoke the flames of anger within the hearts and minds of the German people, just as Donaldolf Trumpolini is trying to do here in the United States as we speak into our microphones and talk to you folks. Again, the warning signs are all there. History is a great teacher, and it is teaching us that if we do not pay attention to these red flags and warning signs from the past, then we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. History is entirely cyclical in nature. It's not linearly progressive as Karl Marx would teach. And when Donald Trump says, I'm great at this, I'm great at winning, you know, it's not just about winning. You have to be able to address problems as they arise, and you have to be able to bridge gaps and reach across sometimes to different factions and different nations to create a coalition to resolve the problems. I don't see that with Trump. He hasn't unified our party. He has driven a wedge between the various factions of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, making us a fractured party. And I think that some of that may be irreparable.
Now, here's the thing. I mentioned, we talked about him unifying people, doing things to get people to follow him, to build a base. I've brought people over. I've got people to come over to the Republican Party, this and that, whatever. What he has done, like you said, he's fractured the party, but he has alienated people. Now,
of course he has.
And again, I'm going to bring up his stance on healthcare, where everybody should have healthcare, but the government's going to pay for it. Well, in doing that, again, you run the risk of violating people's rights. You alienate certain individuals, because what you're doing is, there's more people that are going to benefit from it that are going to have their rights violated. At the same time, this is where the balkanization comes in. He's doing that for the vast majority of people and alienating only a few in order to get his agenda put through. On the flip side of that, 70% of conservatives in the United States, voting conservatives, will not vote for Donald Trump. That happens to be the vast majority of conservatives. Now, if they're not going to support you, that's where the balkanization comes in. You say is for the people of the country, blah, 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 but yet you're alienating the 70% of the voting base in doing this. But you don't care, because so long as your agenda gets pushed through, so long as what you're trying to accomplish gets pushed through, you're willing to take the hit of alienating voters and fracturing the party in order for us now a select, instead of the majority, now it's the minority that you're going to carry on your back. This is what happens when, and this goes right back to Marx, with the proletariats and the bourgeoisie. That is what he's doing. That is exactly what he's doing. Because Marx talked about the minority, the proletariats rising up, taking power. Trump is establishing that with his base. He is creating a proletariat base while alienating the bourgeoisie, so to speak, or the vast majority.
Yeah, what Marx referred to that was the dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship. You see, folks, these signs from history are all there, all warning us about what it is that he's attempting to accomplish and what results it would have with respect to the country. And again, the way that you combat this, because we at the Wright Flyer do provide you with solutions, the way that we combat that is to recall that we, the people, are popular sovereigns. All of this, strategy, how to do this, that, or the other to secure the nomination, don't bother with that. Bother with the constitutional lens. Bother with determining whether the candidate you support is in line with the Constitution. Ask yourself why you support the candidate you do, and then vote your conscience. That is the way to move forward.
All these strategies and tactics, how are they going to be implemented and carried out if you don't have people that understand the root of that? If people do not understand the Constitution, you can have all these strategies and all these plans to do this, and this, but if you don't have the people with the knowledge and the tools and the framework to carry those things out, it can't happen. It's just on paper. That's it. It would be like Patton. Let's take General Patton, for example. General Patton is a brilliant man, brilliant general. If he did not have the knowledge and the understanding of military strategy and tactics, more so if he did not have the understanding of how to delegate authority to people and to inspire those under his command to actually do things. When General Patton said the object is to not die for your country, but make the other poor son of a bitch die for his.
I believe it was other poor bastard die for his.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing. But that is motivational. He understood how to motivate people. He understood how to get people to act and do things in a productive fashion to where they won wars, or they won
battles.
Battles, theatrical battles.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not have somebody that can lead or inspire or motivate people to carry out these strategies and tactics to get things done, to unify with each other, to right the ship that has been, steered.
Listing.
It's just gone. Folks, we're looking at another catastrophe here called the Trump-tanic, and it's headed straight for a cruiseberg. It's going to hit and sink. Why? Because the captain of that ship decides to run out and stand on the bow and not do anything. Would rather go down with the ship and stand there as, a three-piece orchestra or three-piece music section is playing some kind of funeral dirge, while the ship sinks.
Yeah.
We have to have somebody who is inspiring, motivational, and even more so than that, someone who understands the core principles and values of what that motivation and inspiration is based on.
And, we hear all of the anger with politicians. We don't want a politician. We don't want a politician. Fine. We don't want a politician, but we want a statesman. And I'm sorry. But when you look at the record of Trump and you look at his brash and vulgarian demeanor, he is not a statesman. There is only one statesman standing up there, folks. There is only one man who, even when his public relations director, Mr. Tyler, had done something that was perceived to be a problem, yes, it was a problem, but didn't amount to the same thing that Corey Lewandowski is facing with criminal charges. He fired him. Mm-hmm. But we see that Donaldolph Trumpolini has not taken responsibility. He has not taken the higher road. He has not shown that he holds his people accountable because he doesn't hold himself accountable. That is a major problem. And that will lead to a further fracturing of the nation and to a further fracturing of the party and will seal an inevitable defeat come the general election against a candidate who is quintessentially unelectable. Hillary Rotten Clinton, Madam Clinton herself.
No, and instead what Trump did with Lewandowski, instead of firing him,
yeah, put him by his right shoulder.
He had him standing on his right side. Now, what is that reminiscent of, Randy?
Hitler and Goebbels, for one thing.
Hitler and Goebbels. Exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Lewandowski, the campaign manager. Goebbels, minister of propaganda. It's only a matter of time before Lewandowski starts giving stump speeches on behalf of Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Goebbels did for Hitler.
Yeah. We are fast approaching that point. And you see, folks, the tenets of history, the lessons of history are there for us all to see. And we're just bringing this to the light for you. And again, this is why we are the voice of the resistance. You know, Goebbels spun his propaganda, and he was a mastermind of propaganda. He controlled it, and he was able to dupe the German people time and again to continue to bolster their will to fight come hell or high water. But remember that when all of the BBC Freedom Voice, radio broadcasts were carrying through into German-held territory, they made the penalty for listening to that so staunch, so draconian. And why? Because they knew that just a single word that contradicted the accepted party line, the accepted story, would unravel all of their propaganda. Because through pure speculation, through gossip, it would spread and it would become an out-of-control inferno that they would not be able to snuff out, and it would, plant the seed of defeatism in the mind of the German people. And they viewed that as toxic. They feared that above all else. Why? Because they thought that is what defeated them in the First World War.
Sure. And again, it goes all the way back to the propaganda that was utilized. Mm-hmm. We can look at all this propaganda, or Trumpaganda as I call it. It's all the rhetoric of whether it's inciting violence, condoning people for infringing upon other individuals' First Amendment rights to protest his rallies or even get inside the road. See, these rallies, they're charged a ticket, a price for a ticket, paid admission. Well, if an individual pays for the ticket, pays for the admission, they've purchased a good or a service, okay, a product. They are free to use that product, i.e., they're inside the event center, wherever it may be, and if they happen to have an anti-Trump sign, that's their right. If you don't allow those individuals in, or let's take it a step further, if you prevent journalists or reporters from being allowed to come to your rallies or your events because they don't hold your views and you're afraid they're going to question you in an unfair light, you have them prevented from coming in. No access.
or you keep them so far back in a pen that they can't ask questions,
Sure.
like what we've seen at the Trump rallies.
Sure.
You see, folks, this is the light of truth that we bring to you, and that is why we have made the vow that we have to stand up with you, to empower you, to never abandon you, as so many conservative or so-called conservative voices have. That has been the shocking trend we have seen, whether it be Joe Arpaio, Jeff Sessions, Sarah Palin, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh. It doesn't matter. We will not betray you, because our allegiance is to the Constitution, and that's where your allegiance, we're confident, is as well. We will stand with you. We will continue to be that voice of freedom. And with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am Randy Wright. I've been your captain, and I'm joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We also invite you to leave questions, comments, or concerns either here on our YouTube page or on our Facebook page or Google Plus page. And we also invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle of @RadioAviationX. That's all one word, folks. @RadioAviationEX. Once again, @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find our departure board, where you'll have the personal Twitter accounts of Jeremy and yours truly, and our Cafe Press account. Folks, we invite you to take a look at some of the goodies we have there for you, because there really are some goodies. And please support us in this endeavor that we have to be this voice of resistance, to bring this program to you so that we can continue to shine the light of liberty for all to see. Thank you, folks. We will see you again next time. Do take care.